I had just finished a Dale Carnegie course, which was taught by Wally Keenan out of the old Rome Hotel. And prior to taking that course, I'd been absolutely unable to speak in public. And after taking the course, I decided, which had a big effect on my life, I decided that I'd better get out in public and keep talking, or I would lapse back into my previous state. So I went out to what was then the University of Omaha and volunteered my services, and luckily for me, they took me up on it. That was the only class that I believe that was the only class that I taught for where I had to grade the students and so on. So I went into that class, and they were all, practically all of them, about my age or older. In fact, there were some bootstrappers, as I remember, from Strategic Air Command. And in any event, I was the youngest looking one in the group, if I wasn't the youngest. But I enjoyed it, and I did not enjoy passing out grades to students. So after that first time, or maybe two times, I always taught non-credit classes because I didn't really like. It wasn't that I didn't like grading the papers. I just didn't like giving anybody C's or D's. So and really I wasn't there to be, I was there to try and get a message across and information across, and I wasn't primarily concerned with grading students. It would have been probably early in 1952. You'd have to look that up to be absolutely sure, but I took the Dale Carnegie course in the fall of 1951 after coming back to Omaha, and I may well have gone out to see Dean Lucas at that time, John Lucas. I don't remember the event itself, but I knew him just a bit. My family knew him pretty well, quite well, and were friends. So he probably was the fellow I went out to talk to. I can't remember specifically, but my Aunt Alice, for example, took a very early class with me, and there were friends of mine that would come out and take those classes, and I met a lot of nice people through teaching there early on. She liked it, and I liked it, and I've got pictures from those days. And Gabe Parks came out and took the class from the World Herald, and I think he even submitted a story and pictures to Life magazine. I think he was a stringer for them, but it never made it. But I think they thought the idea of a 21 or 22-year-old teaching a class might make an interesting story. But like I say, we never cracked Life magazine. Yeah, I didn't really use notes very much. I would just sort of wing it generally. I never did elaborate preparation, but I tried to use real life examples in class because the professor that I learned the most from, Ben Graham, always used current examples, and it just made the class very interesting. So in those early days, I would come out with a lot of examples. So I might have had pass outs that showed, a bunch of figures or something like that, so that we could talk about a given sort of case study. But I found that if you livened it up with real life examples, that people enjoyed it a lot more. Well, the main thing was it just got me up and doing it. I mean, before I took the Dale Carnegie class, I literally couldn't. I would get physically ill before I would be able to speak in public, and so it was important to me that I just get up in front of people, and I found out I could do it, and I enjoyed it, and you do learn something, obviously, when you either teach or write. The person who does it learns more than the person on the other end usually. It clarifies thought. There's no question about that. Having to defend your ideas, so that as a teacher, you're probably the number one student in the room. Well, I moved from Omaha in 1954 back to New York, and actually I taught a course at the Scarsdale Adult School while I was back in New York right before I then returned to Omaha in 1956. But when I came back, I started doing it again. There came a time when, I don't know whether I'd done it for 15 years or what, but I probably ran out of gas at some point, in terms of time demands and a fairly young family and all of that. But I've always enjoyed it, and I still do it. I had 162 students here yesterday from 6 schools, so I continued to enjoy it. Doing it doing it on a weekly schedule grinds away a little bit more, and it was always in the evening, so it would take an evening out of every week, and so eventually I tailed off on that one. I benefited enormously from a few teachers, when I was at both in undergraduate school and graduate school, and so I think that part of life is passing along what you've learned to the next generation. Now, the truth is, I enjoy it. I wouldn't do if it was like having my a root canal, which I had a few weeks ago. I wouldn't be doing it. So I enjoy the experience, but I do think it's useful to talk to young people. I don't talk to. I literally get hundreds and hundreds of invitations to talk to, trade associations or chambers or whatever it may be, and I virtually never do any speaking to groups of older people, because the truth is they what they want to be is entertained, and they want predictions, but they're not going to change their lives at all. But when you talk to young people, you're going to have some effect on at least a few in every audience who actually are going to modify their behavior or their thinking about the world in some way if you talk to them when they're young. So that's my audience as far as I'm concerned. If I were arranging the curriculum for an investment major in finance or investments, I would just have two courses, which would be how to value a business and how to think about the market. And I think if you mastered those two subjects, all the rest of them would be unimportant. I love newspapers. I've loved them since I was 5 or 6 years old, and my dad would bring home the paper. Then it was always the afternoon paper. He'd bring it home from work. It was a late edition, and I would probably start at the sports page and go on to the financial page and end up in the comics or something of the sort. But newspapers, I still read five newspapers daily, and so I've always enjoyed it. And what I do in my job is a form of reporting. I mean, I assign myself a story. What is Coca-Cola worth? Or, what's the future of the Washington Post Company? I assign myself a story just like an editor would assign a reporter a story. And then I go out and try and write that story, a week later, or a month later, or 2 months later, whenever I've gathered the necessary facts and processed them in a way to enable me to, in effect, write a narrative in my mind about the business and the industry. That's what I do. So what I do and what a reporter does is very similar, and I enjoy that. If I wasn't in the business I'm in, I would enjoy being a reporter. I'd like that better than being an editor. Well, with ABC, I got involved in that in 1985 when Cap Cities bought it, and my friend Tom Murphy called me in Washington, and he said, he opened the conversation with, "You're not going to believe this, pal, but I think we're going to buy ABC. Now come up here and tell me how to pay for it." So I found the whole experience with ABC terribly interesting, but I've always found the media business, interesting in various aspects, I did get a fair amount of experience with meeting with the talent of one sort, the news people. I got to know Peter Jennings reasonably well, or Barbara Walters, or Diane Sawyer, or Charlie Gibson, or all of those. But then I guess it was 1995, we made the decision to merge with Disney, and I did not become actively involved with Disney. I'd owned Disney stock 30 years earlier when I was running a partnership, and I actually met Walt Disney when I was a 34-year-old. He couldn't have been nicer to me. He didn't know who I was or anything else. He took me to lunch in the commissary and laid out his plans for the future and everything. So I had a wonderful experience with him, but I never was really involved in the Disney company. Michael Eisner, who ran it, was a friend of mine, and Bob Iger, who runs it now, is a friend of mine. So we've talked about it some, but I've never been on the board. But Charlie Rose is, that's my favorite show. It's my favorite to watch, and it's my favorite to appear on. It's an hour uninterrupted with a fellow that is extremely knowledgeable about whatever subject he's talking about. Amazing breadth of knowledge, and he has a memory as to what you've said before, and he understands what other people are talking about on the subject, and it's just it's a terrific conversation to have. So I enjoy. I watch a lot of Charlie Rose's show. I go to his internet site to pick up on the ones I missed. Just last night or the night before, he had on the fellow El Barade, who runs the IAEA. He's just stepping down now. The International Atomic Energy oversight, really, for the world. And I will go to that. I will go to the internet site here in the next day or two and click that on and watch that whole program. So, but that it doesn't really enter into my business. It's just a forum in which to discuss, whatever issues are seem important. We connected 50 years ago. The first night we met, it was clear that we in a great many ways were intellectually in sync. And we liked each other immediately, and 50 years later, even though we're both strong-minded and disagree on things, we've never had an argument in 50 years and never will. And no, it's just fun interacting with Charlie. He's as smart as anybody I've ever met in my life, and comes at every problem with a rationality or every issue with a rationality that is sort of unrivaled. So. There's nobody whose opinion I'd rather get on almost any subject than Charlie's. Doesn't mean I'll follow it, but when we disagree, he always says, "Well," he says, "Warren, you'll agree with me because you're smart and I'm right."